Well, we're in Cumbria today, and we're going to have a look at one of the early waggonways. Well, we're saying it's an early waggonway. When you compare it to Tyneside, perhaps not that early. And in Cumbria, where we can go back to really is 1683, where the first sort of causeway was constructed, which was sort of halfway between a waggonway and a causeway to get the coal from the pits down to the harbour. And basically it was a way to take the carts, but it had big wooden balks at either side. And the first waggonway, according to Lewis in his book about waggonways, was 1735, and that was constructed by the famous Carliles Spedding to get coal away from the Salton pit again down to the docks. So the Tindale Fell Waggonway in 1799, in comparison, isn't that early, is it? But the mainline railway that developed off it certainly was one of the early mainline railways. And the coalfield itself is very early. In all probability, it goes back to Roman times, certain parts of it. Now, so what remains can we see today? Not a lot of the original waggonway. Again, as I said, it evolved into a mainline railway. And quite a bit of work was done around about the year 2000 that destroyed lots of the old waggonway. So as we see here, we're between Milton and Hallbank Gate. The waggonway itself ran from Brampton town right up onto Tindale Fell, or TarnHouse colliery it served there, which is over 1,000 feet above sea level and about 5.5, 6 miles away from Brampton. And as you're driving up the road, the most obvious signs you can see of it are in this field here between Milton and Hallbank Gate. You can clearly see that running through the field. And also, just while we're here, if you look at this straight line of trees, oh, that's the main line. That was actually an inclined plane that was constructed a lot later. We've moved up to Hallbank Gate, and we see the later 1828 main line running this way, and notice that branch line off it. We'll come back to that. But the waggonway actually is running through this field here and round the corner at Cleskets. Now, the best place to park if you're going to explore the area is here at the RSPB at Geltsdale, where I parked. You can see the waggonway running up here, and now it seems to split. Obviously it didn't split originally. That is an original spur going across there past Hogle and then up to the shop pit. That's its original terminus in 1799. These two branches, this one goes off into the massive limestone quarry there at Forest Head and Lime Works, and this branch from 1820, 1821 goes to serve the Black Site colliery. Also, you can just see running across the hill here, that is a mainline railway that was constructed in around about 1909 to the Gayers colliery, and it ran until 1936. So we've moved across. There's the Hogle Battery, there's a branch running up to Shop Pit, and the main line running up to the Gayers. And the original waggonway itself went across Hogle Brook on a bridge here, and then made its way up the fell side. This is a normal road, runs up to Ladlehead Farm and right up onto the fell. Now, this branch across the Hogle Brook was driven around about 1801 to the recovery pit, and then onto the hazard pit and the recovery pit. And at a later date, in the 1830s, another branch was put across lower down to run to the Hogle Drift here. You're looking at the side elevation. You see that's the course of the waggonway running up the fell, and I believe it had a few different. It was laid a couple of different times, I believe, to the separate drifts, because as it ran up the fell there's many faults in the coal. It's a little limestone coal, many faults running that direction, and new drifts were put in rather than go through many of the faults. So there's multiple drifts all the way up to what's known as the Henry Pit. So I turn the elevation again. There's the original line running up towards, there's the recovery pit and the thorn pit, up to the hazard. Now the hazard pit is very important because it looks as though the first underground waggonway was in there. Some people say in 1775. That's quite possible, but we certainly know it was there was an underground waggonway there in the early 1880s. In 1882, thanks to Graham Brooks, Thomas Morrow and Aaron Moses and David Thimbley, they were paid £108.15 for driving 107 yards of drift. They were also paid for walling with stone and for a waggon road in the hazard pit. In 1785, David Thimbley and Amos Moses again were paid £21.11 for cutting the waggonway, and Joseph Dunn was paid £23.06 for laying a waggonway. And we look at some of the old plans, and it certainly shows two waggonways at least running in the hazard. One is the Mother Gate running straight that direction, and another running this way through a fault into the Stag Pit. Now, it appears though that first waggonway underground was laid with fir. That was the timber used. I keep saying elm on the video. I'm sorry, it was fir. And one of the reasons they used fir was it was very malleable. You could bend it and it was strong. So that's an overview of where we're at with the Tindale Fell Waggonway.
Just a quick video today really, bit of field work and a recce to somewhere I haven't really walked for about 25 years. I'm in the car park at the RSPB at Geltsdale. We're near the old Colliery Railway and the Brampton Railway, so we're in Cumbria, and I'm going to have a look up at the old waggonway. Like I say, I haven't been up there for 25 years, so this is just a quick look. We're going to come back and try and do a proper history with some of the history that I've got. I know that people are really looking into this at present, so I can only give you what I've got. The old railway actually is just beyond those trees there. You can see the embankment, can't you? And behind that, near where that car's running, you can see another branch going off up to Forest Head Quarries. So originally it was a waggonway, horse-drawn, and obviously they came down on their own steam. And then it was upgraded to a mainline railway to serve the TarnHouse collieries actually. If we look up, everything on this side is known as Talking Colliery, and then this is TarnHouse Colliery, comprised of many different pits. Last worked around about 1971 as a private mine, but dates back from time immemorial, as we will say. But certainly work was really undertaken at a pace up here by 1747. They really turned their attention back to here after the well, I will say the time after the last Scots uprising, which must have affected the local industry around here. It had to. There's Hogle Cottages. You can see that other old building there, and next to it, just in front, is the Hogle Battery, or embankment. Up here they call embankments batteries, don't ask me why. And the term Hogle, the name Hogle is written Howgill, but up here they flatten that vowel and it's Hogle. I stood on the Hogle Battery, and the little building by the side of us here. If I get another shot of this from the other side, I have a photograph from 1921 in the snow showing exactly the same shot. I apologise for the wind, like I say, it's just a rough field study, YouTube this really. Now from here, it separated, it divided. The branch going off to the Hogle Drift is there, and further up there was a branch that went off to the original one, that went across to the original waggon road that runs up the fell. However, the first pit that the waggon road was used for was the shop pit on this side of the fell. That was about 1897, and then around about 1801, don't quote us on the date, that branch was put across to serve originally the recovery pit. And then Hogeldrift was put in the 1830s, I think, I have it written down, to get coal beyond the fault that was left by the recovery pit.
So look on the geological survey of the area. What you've got to note is these here in the dark are the true coals, and this side, these are the limestone coals. So the limestone coals lie well beneath what's known as the true coals, actually. So this is our area of interest along Tindale Fell. This fault here cuts the entire coalfield off to an extent. That's a great Stublick dike. I think it's about 1,600 foot down through towards the south. And here are our Tindale Fell pits here. So I've enlarged it a little bit. We've got the railway line running along here. These are the Howard pits. The black site colliery shafts there, the Havana, and these are different pits in the Talking collieries. The Duke, the Dove. We've got here we've got Shot Pit and the Venter. You see how they're all cut off by the different faults and the different outcrops. So our pardon me, our wagon road comes up here onto Tindale Fell. And these are all the Tindale Fell drifts. Can you see the different faults cutting off the various outcrops? Which is why multiple drifts are put in all up the fell. And then when we get above Tindale village itself, quite big faults, and the outcrop is down here. So the Bishop Hill drift is further down. So that gives you a little bit of an idea where the various pits and the various outcrops were and why they're there. Okay, this is from Trotter and Hollingworth's British Geological Survey on the Brampton coalfield, and this gives a bit of an idea into the little limestone seam, our area around Denton Fell, and also around Rochburn, and the entire area really of how it's split up and how it differs. This is showing the different zones, so don't get too involved in it. This area is the outcrop that runs from Rochburn right across to Greenhead. And then you've got the Byron outcrop and the Roman wall, running up the Roman wall past Fell End, right up into the Roman wall above South Tyne. This outcrop runs from the Coal Fell into the Howard and down towards the railway. And we look across, we've got the Black Syke and the Talking colliery area. The Gears is just out of shot, and again this is the Tindale Fell area that we're examining today. Can you see all the various faults and the various outcrops? And what's this doing is splitting it up into zones to show you how thick it is in certain areas. And if we just move up a little bit, the Gears area comes into view there in Tarnmonth, and then we get down to the Alston coals, Slaggerford, Snopeburn and Towes Bank. So it's the Tindale Fell area that we're looking at, and I do look down the valley from up on the Tindale Fells up at the Stag Pit to show you the various outcrops and where the various faults are. So can you see how split up the coal is? And each of the zones it varies where the coal is within the strata as well. This is where it's at its thickest in the Rochburn sort of area. 4 to 5 feet plus 1 foot is about 6 foot in areas. Certainly the Byron and the Blenkinsop area, this zone is 6 foot. It lessens when it gets to Fell End and South Tyne because the seams split. In the Byron zone, this zone here, all 3 seams within the little limestone come together under the limestone itself. But at Tindale Fell, we're averaging round about 4 feet of coal. And again, its nature changes when we get to the Tarnmonth Gears area. It starts to become a little bit like anthracite. This takes us to the seam sections. Now there's 3 coals within the little limestone between the little limestone itself and the great limestone. And they differ which coal is worked. That is why the quality is so different in different parts of the coal field. If we look at the Howard, that's the limestone at the top. Can you see the work in the bottom coal? And it gets up to the Campbell shaft, and all this area of plate here has been washed out. Rochburn, again, is different. Then we get to the Byron and Blenkinsop, and all three seams form one coal underneath the limestone. And you can see they start to separate at Fell End, and that is 6 foot. Now obviously the area we're interested in is Tindale Fell. We've got the Dove Shaft in Torking Colliery, that was 300 feet deep thereabouts. There we've got the seam section, and again they're working the bottom seam, same as at Black Syke, and the quality there was really good. To the Venture, we've got a washout of some of the strata. We've only got 2 coals there, the one immediately below the limestone, and the middle coal is missing. So where it's good quality here, they're working the bottom coal, if you can see. And then we get to Bishop Hill, and all three of them come together again under the limestone, and I believe that it was 6 foot at Bishop Hill in places, although the quality isn't great. Then we get on to Denton Fell, going around by Regarth Pit up there, and again the strata is totally different. We're working the bottom seam again, but look at all that intervening limestone and plate, well not limestone, sorry, sandstone and plate. So we get to Byron, where the seams split on the other side of the Winddyke, and they're not all together again, are they? Gears again is different. Borehole at Black Syke, and then again as we come across towards Hartley Burn, Plenmellow and South Tyne, it's slightly different as well. Then we get into the Alston coals. Don't forget now, these are semi-anthracite. It starts to turn a little bit anthracite at the Gears and at Tarn Monmouth. At Barrow, where I was at, there you've got the 3 coals, and we were at the middle seam. Towsbank again is different, and that's your section across all the 3 different zones from Rochburn, Denton Fell, Hartley Burn, and across into the Alston coals. And you know that the little limestone hasn't been worked at Hartley Burn. All that is there sat waiting to be got. Probably tired of waiting by now.
You see the tramway, the old waggonway running up the side of the fence here on this side, at the back of Hogle Cottages. And this is a bridge, the remains of the bridge across the Hogle Burn. This is the remains then of the first river crossing from 1801. They've had another bridge up here. And there are scant remains. There's a second crossing down there. And looking up on the waggonway here. There we go, across there. This is the first crossing, the first bridge was across the Hogle Beck here. There's signs of the abutment on the other side, but not really on this side. This is the original wagon road then that goes up on the TarnHouse collieries. I'm sure it was 1801 that they put a bridge across the Hogle Beck and put this tram road in. We're near the Hogle Drift at present. You see, here's one of the pit heaps. Well, that is the pit heap from the Hogle Drift. And just there, we can see the tram road that was put across to the Hogle Drift to serve that. And that went back, obviously, onto the original, what was by then a main line. This originally was a waggonway, wrought iron with fish belly rails. I'm not sure if it was originally a wooden waggonway. I can't remember off the top of my head. Certainly they were using wood underground since the mid-1880s. So this served all the pits on the upper side. It goes right across the fell. And if we look across, there's Tindale Tarn, you can just see. They used to have regattas on there, believe it or not. And where you can start seeing the trees on the back, we've got the Coal Fell. And we've got records up there from the 1520s. They wouldn't let me see them at Durham University though, they wouldn't let me get my grubby little hands on them. And there's a line of the lower tramway going back down to the Hogle Battery. and obviously the line of the original one, and shot pit on the other side of the beck. That's the Hogle drift now all fallen in, and just above we've got the pit heap from the original recovery pit. When I keep saying Hogle, I want to keep talking about Pogle's Wood. There you see the tramway coming to it, the upper tramway there. That was driven a long way in solid stone to get under, well, to get under the old workings from above it and through the fault. It was a down throw fault. This is the recovery pit above. The first destination of the Waggonway, which we see with the brown ferns. This later became the Duke pit that was reopened, was it the late 50s, early 60s? It ran till about 70, 71. A private mine. If my information's right, they started off at the Havana, near Black Syke over there, and the tale I got told, which could be apocryphal of course, some of them had a pools win and put the money into it. The Havana, apparently, I think there was a lot of black damp there. I got told they opened it up and it put the candles out, but these could be apocryphal tales. So they came here and operated as a Duke Coal Company for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, working the little limestone coal, which was about 4 foot. And it seems to have been a very successful operation, of which we do have photographs. They've been mining up here, as my favourite saying is, from time immemorial. But there is records, as I say, going back to 1520s in the records office at Durham. There's written records from Belted Will's house book. Now, Belted Will was one of the first Earls of Carlisle. They came from the Dacre family actually. The Dacres, the last Dacre daughter married into the Howards, and they became the Earls of Carlisle. Anyway, Belted Will had some house books, his accounts, and we can still see bits of them. So they're up in Midgeholme in the early 1600s, because the quality of the coal up in Midgeholme was better. It was in the middle coal measures, you see. These are the limestone coals, and although it's pretty good here, it's not as good as up there. But it looks like operations came to an end up at Midgeholme with a civil war, and Belted Will, who wasn't in good health at that time, took to his heels out the road, and the Scots kind of took advantage of an empty house, if you know what I mean. Anyway, it wasn't until, well, they were back at Midgeholme after that. We've got plenty of reports in the early 1700s up there. But you've got to remember, coal transport, it was very expensive, and the roads weren't very good, so it was all pack horse. And you've got an extra 3 or 4 miles to Midgeholme. So it was easier to bring coal from here, even though it was perhaps slightly inferior quality, although it isn't too bad at the TarnHouse colliery. So they were certainly back here by 1747, just after the Jacobite rebellion, after that got put down. So we've got a stable climate. And after that, well, when has Britain not been at war? But we had all the wars that were going on, didn't we, with the Napoleonic Wars, which is a boon for industry. Coal, obviously, for the foundries to make the cannonballs, and the cotton industry did a boon as well, didn't it, because they wanted uniforms for people as well. So TarnHouse and Torkin really took off at that time, and the tram road was put in, as I say, they brought it up about 1797, but they were using rails underground at the Hazard pit, which is further along, by the mid 1780s. There's 2 big waggonways that's shown on the plan. It calls it Mothergate, and Graham Brooks has found the account books. He's going through them with a fine-tooth comb. So we're now up at the Thorn pit, which again was used by the Duke Coal Company, and these are their remains. The last time I was up here, that roof was still up and it looked like a drift end, which was brilliant. I don't know what was situated here. Was there a fan on top of that, or was there a hauler? There's a little bit of metal work just underneath the ground there. Great to see the relics of an old drift end, isn't it? It's fantastic to see that. Obviously it's fallen in. Now this was driven to get to the other side of a fault in the recovery pit. I think it was a down throw fault. And the Hazard workings join up with this, and when you get in here not so far, you join up to the old Hazard Waggonway, which was railed up in the 1780s with elm rails. So that's probably why the Duke Coal Company used it. It must have been a good road. And from the accounts Graham Brooks has found, there was people just in charge of driving the wagon road, so it would have been driven and supported well. Obviously ripped up because they would have had ponies in there as well, so it would have been higher than the normal workings. So this is part of the old Thorn, and there was a building that appears on the first maps as Colliery Thorn. That's where we were just stood, and this is definitely a drift end in. You see where all the spoils come from up on the fell, so maybe this is the hazard drift. I hate not knowing for sure. There's a bit of a cabin further up. There is a bit more infrastructure here. Everything's so damaged and washed away. You can get a good vantage point actually here of the little limestone coal. We've got it up, cropping out up here. Now then, the Roachburn coal is right down where we can see those houses on the main road, down there. And the crop edge of the Roachburn coal goes right up the fell into those trees and right across towards Greenhead Bank. In fact, that's where the inundation was, and the back stand's up there. And we'll come along the fell, and then we've got Greenside Farm. Where are we? Greenside Farm. Greenside Farm. And in the field behind these trees here is where the coal fell is, and that's where they were working coal up there in the 1520s, and the Wingate pit was there as well. And just in the foreground from there on the breast of the hill was the Howard workings. So the Little Limestone, although there's 3 seams within the Little Limestone cyclothem, it gets about a bit. It's unpredictable, and it's in different qualities wherever it goes. Here it's good quality, across on the coal fell it's good quality, but the Roachburn coal isn't. That's our little patch of outcrop there, and we've got 2 drifts in here. I don't know if these are the stag drifts, I can't say for sure. It's easy to get lost with them, but there's twin drifts going in there, and there's quite a bit of infrastructure here also. You see the raised ground in the foreground, and I'm stood on something here as well. Looking up the Waggonway, we're again on a bit of a platform. And it looks like there's been something on the bank edge there. It's getting dark. Like I said, it was just a quick field trip, but we're right above TarnHouse there now. See it at the bottom, Tindale Tarn. We've got a clear view of the Waggonway going on. And I've left off where the 2 drifts were, and I know there are remains of an old smithy up here as well, and I'm wondering if this patch of ground could be part of the smithy. I don't know. There's 2 drifts in there. I'm looking back down the Waggonway now. So we're going to leave it there anyway. A brief look at the old Waggonway, and we'll come back next time on a better day and with a bit more history. But I hope you found that a little bit informative anyway, and it helps me when I get home also to look at these things again and have a second think. This is the remains of Ladle Head, just below the hazard, so that must have been the hazard that I thought was the hazard. There's also a building called Colliery Thorn as well, but this is Ladle Head on the 1865 map, now in ruins. Last time I came up here it was very better preserved, and I'm sure one reference was to the Ladle Head pit. Well, that would point at being the hazard, wouldn't it? Anyway, thanks for watching. Today trains like that draw a crowd, don't they? We've had a small crowd here today watching that. But you know, you look at the photographs and the pictures, not photographs, of the old Waggonways, and it always shows a guy just sat on the brake. He's like what we would call a cool half back, nothing seems to shake him, and the wagon's going quietly down the track, isn't it, with the horse plundering behind. So nice and steady and gentle. But do you know, I kind of think, what young lad in them days wouldn't fancy being a wagonway driver? And it wouldn't have been plodding down the road like that, it would have been going a heck of a lick, and he'd have been hanging on the back. I remember my mate, going back to when we were young, being 18-year-old, driving my van down the road, and my mate was in the back, photographing my other mate who was riding his motorbike behind us, and we still got the photo where he stood up on the seat, riding the bike at 70 mile an hour down Burnley Road. That's what young lads were like, and I bet that's what a lot of these wagon wheel drivers were like. There'd have been spills all over the place, eh?